What's going on, everybody? Patrick from Obscure Reference here, and today we got a special little tier list video going on for you. Here's the thing. All right, as of recording this, Deadpool and Wolverine is just a few short days away. So I thought, what better way to celebrate the end of the supposed end of the Fox universe characters with a ranking of every movie that they've ever released. Now, here's the thing. As you can see here on this lovely tier list that I found on Tier Maker, this is every Marvel movie, and eventually we'll get there. But for right now, in this moment, I figured now would be the best time to rank every Fox Marvel movie ever. So we will be starting with the X Men movies, Daredevil, Elektra, all the Fantastic Four movies, and the Deadpool movies. Now, we've also got the MCU, we've got the Spider Man movies. We'll get to all those eventually, but for today, we're just focusing on X Men and the rest of the Fox universe. Uh, because that's probably what's going to play the most prominent role in Deadpool and Wolverine. Without spoiling anything, and don't worry, I'm not spoiling anything. I haven't seen the movie. I've only seen what's come out from promotional material. So and if I've heard any rumors about it, I'm just gonna keep my mouth shut. So don't worry about that. We're just gonna be looking at these movies as they are, and I'll do my best not to make any hints about who might be showing up, if I know anything, which honestly I don't. So, with that being said, let's take it all the way back to the year 2000. In a much, I'd say, less crazy world, but I mean, let's be honest, if we were there, we'd probably be saying the same things we're saying today. So, the year 2000, X Men comes out. This is, up to this point, the only modern, prominent Marvel movies haven't really done much. We had the Blade movies, and depending on who you ask, some of those aren't great. I haven't watched them yet personally. We'll get to those another day. We also had Howard the Duck, which most people wouldn't attribute as a Marvel movie, but yes, it is. So, um, not really much going in the way of superhero movies, and X Men was kind of the first one to break the mold. Um, so, right off the bat, I'm thinking, and it was interesting going back and watching it because it's definitely a product of its time. They all wear black leather, and it's more or less confirmed that that was because of the Matrix and the popularity of that at the time. So yeah, there's a lot of weird little clips that definitely haven't aged well. Um, the one where Cyclops throws Wolverine, "What would you rather wear?" Tight yellow spandex has been joked about a lot since then, and even had a reference in X Men '97. Yeah, a lot of good stuff in it though. I think there's for doing what it does, being the first actually pretty good Marvel like live action superhero movie. I'm doing DC a discredit there. They had Tim Burton's Batman movies and some of the early Superman movies were pretty good. So before I get lambasted in the comments, yes, DC had some pretty good movies before this point. But X Men was really the one that kind of broke the mold and showed that they could be done in a modern sense, at least in the year 2000. Uh, and you could talk about where the narrative goes from there because I think honestly, Spider-Man comes around and takes the world by not by storm, but Spider-Man. He's gonna be super popular. Um, so that all being said, X-Men definitely a product of its time. It hasn't aged greatly, and I'm not talking about like it should be canceled or anything. It's just a lot of cheap effects that look cheap now. I'm sure it costs a ton of money back in the day, but some of the wire work isn't great. There's some really corny dialogue. There's a line between Toad and Storm, um, where Storm throws at Toad. Is like, "Do you know what happens when Toad gets struck by lightning? Same as everything else, it burns or whatever." I don't. It's so corny and goofy. You kind of have to go along with the charm of it, but at the same time, they're trying to make a comic that can get as weird as the X Men do and modernize it for the average moviegoer. And I think they do a pretty good job. Obviously, Hugh Jackman and I always forget the actor's names. Patrick Stewart and oh my God, hold on. And the person who plays Magneto, who is don't tell me it is Ian McKellen. There we go. I am going to get lambast for that, and deservedly so. They all do a great job. Having James Marsden as Cyclops, but then not using him at all. James Marsden's a great actor, and Cyclops is a really cool character. Something that I think a lot of people are kind of turning into or tuning into now that we're post X-Men '97. But this movie doesn't do him any justice. And it also has the Wolverine Jean Cyclops love triangle, which I am not really a fan of. So, all in all, it's a good movie. It definitely shows its age. And the plot itself, it uses a lot of Rogue, which I'm all about. And Anna Paquin's great as Rogue. But and nothing is going to be set in stone until I end the video. And even when we come back to the next, I'll do a review of where I put things last time. So for the time being, I am going to place it as a strong B tier. It's good. It's, but I'm not gonna eagerly seek it out and sit down and watch it. It's fine. It's nothing. It's not atrociously bad. I think there's some really cool ideas here. Like Magneto turning people into mutants, even if it doesn't really make sense. You gotta make some leaps in logic. And the results of that, and Mystique taking over as Senator Kelly at the end is an interesting twist, and definitely wanted me, intrigued me to keep watching. But unfortunately, before that, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, there's another movie that came out before X2 X-Men United, and that is Daredevil, starring. You can't see him here; the poster's cut off. But Ben Affleck and Jennifer Garner as Daredevil and Elektra, respectively. Now you also have Colin Farrell as Poindexter's his real name. What's his name? Bullseye. And then you have, I should have pulled the cast list up, but he's in Talladega Nights and he's really great. Um, but as Kingpin, and hold on, I gotta get this right. It's gonna bother me if I don't. Michael Clark Duncan, thank you. Michael Clark Duncan as Kingpin, who doesn't really get enough to do, and even when he does, it's kind of goofy and corny, but Michael Clark Duncan does a way of selling it where it's like, okay, this is goofy and stupid, and I don't fully buy it, but he's large and intimidating, and I wouldn't mess with him if I were going up against him. So this movie's not good. I'd say it's honestly kind of bad, but it's the kind of bad that's just ridiculous and easy to have fun with. There's a scene where Ben Affleck is following Jennifer Garner to a playground, and then they fight, and she's like, "How are you fighting me if you're blind?" And it's kind of their way of flirting. It's not nearly as bad as a Catwoman basketball scene, but it is not good. So there's quite a few scenes of that. Not super well acted. I think Jennifer Garner does what she can. I think Michael Clark Duncan does as well. And Colin Farrell is just chewing up scenery left and right. He is just a cornball bullseye if I've ever seen one. Here's the thing. He is too much and at the same time not enough. He needed more scenes, but at the same time he just feels weird. And that's kind of this entire movie. It just kind of feels off. Because it has goofy stuff like Bullseye throwing a peanut into a sleeping grandma's throat so that she chokes and stops snoring. But then you also have a training sequence with Elektra, throwing her size around, cutting down sandbags, and Daredevil's suiting up for the final conflict, and it's Evanescence, Bring Me Back to Life is playing. So it's taking itself seriously, but at the same time, maybe taking itself too seriously, and as a result, you can kind of laugh at it. It's not good, but I'm not going to say it's too bad. This is one of those movies where I honestly might turn it on again just to have a good laugh. But I'm not eagerly looking forward to watching it again. So I am probably going to put it in D for Daredevil. And again, nothing set in stone. We'll probably come back to it later. So yeah, that brings us up to X2. Now, this movie is a whole lot of yes, but, it's a whole lot of, man, I really like this story, but it doesn't have great pacing. That's kind of where I'm at with this movie. I love what we do, how we have a few different storylines, kind of how they all come together towards the end. Having, who is it? Jean and Storm go after Nightcrawler after he tried to kill the president, which, let's start there. That's a really strong opening scene. Badass, too. In the back of my head, I was thinking, like, no, Nightcrawler would never do this. And then we come to find that he was being controlled by Stryker, played by none other than I really am dropping the ball on actors' names. It's the dad from Succession. Oh my goodness. We'll come back to it. I'm sure it'll come to me. Um, and he does a really good job as Striker. I'm used to him playing the dad, playing Logan Roy in Succession. Was that right? Brian Cox. That's it. Brian Cox is his name. Who's his character on Succession? Did I nail that? Was it Logan Roy? Yes, I nailed that part. Why couldn't I nail the actor? Anyway, don't take that out of context. But he's great as Striker, and he plays well across from Hugh Jackman's Wolverine pretty well. Um, and this we get a lot more of the side cast in this movie. We get, obviously Iceman's here, Rogue's here. We also get Pyro and his turn away from Xavier's school, which I thought is kind of an underrated part of this movie, but doesn't really. It's not like the most well done thing ever. Um, let's see. We also have some Shadowcat and Colossus love. Shout out to those two. I think we see Jubilee played by a different actress again. I don't know. Jubilee, I think, was in the first one, but again, she doesn't really have any sort of major role in any of these movies, unfortunately. Um, so yeah, we get a lot more of this cool little side, cast that we don't really see much of, but they're there. But then going back to Stryker, he's got Lady Deathstrike, which I don't know if I love how she's portrayed in this movie, but she's cool anyway. Mystique has some really cool scenes working with Magneto, and then Magneto, of course, he has probably one of the best scenes in the movie where he breaks out of jail, and the really drunk guy that Mystique kind of drugged and put a bunch of iron in. He's like, "Oh, too much iron in the blood." And, like, that's a really cool scene where he just walks out of jail like that. Um, and he also has a really fun, just quip that he throws at Rogue with. They're all on the Quinjet. I don't know if it's the Quinjet. I think that's Avengers, but they're all on the Blackbird. That's what it is. They're on the Blackbird heading towards Alkali Lake, and Magneto and Rogue just start laughing. Rogue's like, "What's so funny?" And he's like, "Oh, we were just talking about how we love what you've done with your hair. Just you don't like working with these guys, but you'll do what you have to." There's a lot of really fun stuff here, and the ultimate plot by Stryker to use Xavier to kill every mutant with his mind, and then Magneto trying to undermine that and kill every human instead. There's a lot of really cool stuff in this story. I just think it's a little long and drawn out. So while I want to put it up in the S tier, I do think it is an A tier movie. Strictly because, yeah, it's a little long in the tooth. Cyclops, again, gets no love. Um, and I don't know. There's enough that for me that hold it back. I don't think Storm really gets much to do either. And then we kind of tee up the Phoenix stuff for the next movie, which, whatever. I don't know. So the entire last act is like an hour long, and that's, I don't feel like an exaggeration. I think it's like close to 40 minutes, but I digress. That leads us right up to Elektra, which, if you've never seen this movie, up until this point, I'd say, yeah, you could probably have a good time with these movies. But if you've never seen Elektra, this might be the first one where I say don't bother. This is an F tier, and there's a few reasons. All right. First of all, we kind of just resurrect Elektra off screen. We explain it all. It's Stick that does the whole resurrection thing, even though it's supposed to be the Hand. Whatever. Also, Stick is here, and he wasn't in Daredevil. Whatever. Uh, but she's supposed to take out a kid that she actually falls in love with her single dad. Okay. And the Hand, who do they send after her? They send a couple of mutants and Typhoid Mary. Now, they don't call her Typhoid Mary, they just call her Typhoid. It's very odd. And they have some guy named Tattoo and then another guy who's hard as rocks. And how do they take him out? Oh my god. They drop a tree on him. This movie's so bad, it's like actually making me stupider. This is after he takes a shotgun blast to the chest and doesn't die. So there's a lot of inconsistencies within this movie. The color grading is awful. Some of the lighting in some of these scenes is just truly atrocious. And to say something slightly positive about this movie, I like that they try to highlight the red on Elektra's outfit when she's like actually wearing red, which doesn't feel like a whole lot of this movie, but maybe I'm misremembering. But then there's just so much in this movie that just feels so weird. The CG is awful. The fight choreography is not good. There's no Daredevil for some reason. There's some archival footage I think they use, maybe. I don't know. But she still has the necklace, I think, from the first one. This movie baffles me. It's so bad. Where Daredevil's a fun time to watch, even though it's quite bad. Elektra is just not fun at all. This is the bad kind of bad movie that you don't even wish upon your worst enemies, quite honestly. And from a meta standpoint, it kind of really set superhero films back quite a bit. I think it's on record. I don't know who said it. I forget. But someone high up at Marvel or Disney or Fox saw the success that Elektra had, which is to say, none at all. And they wouldn't go for it with a female led superhero movie for a very long time. It took DC doing Wonder Woman for Marvel to be like, okay, wait, time out. Maybe we should do that. And so they put out Black Widow. And, I pray and hope that Madam Web didn't do the same thing, but we'll see soon enough, I'm sure. Um, that has been stated as the reason why there haven't been as many female-led superhero movies up until, the mid to late 2010s. So, negative shout out to that. Not a huge fan of this movie. This movie sucks. Not really much redeeming it. I think Jennifer Garner is the only person of note in this movie, and I think this killed her career too, quite honestly. So, that's a shame because she's really good. She does what she can with this. There's truly not much to redeem this movie. There is one point where Typhoid Mary kisses Jennifer Garner, and that was nominated for Best Kiss at I think the People's Choice Awards, which fair is fair. I couldn't really comment on that. It was there. So anyway, moving on to the first of the first set of Fantastic Four movies. I think there's one from the '90s. I don't know if that one's actually out in the public, but um, this one's an interesting one. I watched these all the time as a kid, but never actually paid attention to them. Because you see, it was mostly the Silver Surfer one that was on. I don't really remember watching the first one as much, but I digress. This, I think, and we'll talk about the other one and why that misses so hard. This one is actually kind of a fun movie. It's not by any stretch. It's not by any stretch of the imagination a great or even a good movie. Honestly, I think this is a pretty good movie. It's not great, but it is a lot of fun. I think the tone they set for with this is goofy and lighthearted, which is exactly what the Fantastic Four should be. You have, and I think they do a pretty good job of nailing the character dynamics for the most part. I think Reed and Sue. I forget if they're in law. Yes, okay, I remember now. See, it's tough when you're so familiar with Fantastic Four lore, and then you've also seen two different iterations of the Fantastic Four over the last month. Um, but it is Sue working for Doom at the beginning of this movie, and them coming back together. They have a nice dynamic. It works. It's nothing revolutionary, and Johnny and Ben have a really good dynamic as well. Um, and I think they all do, honestly. Johnny's the one trying to get sponsorships on his Fantastic Four uniform. Ben's trying to figure out how to get back to normal, and then he meets Alicia, who's played by the lady from Django Unchained, who I am blanking on at this moment, but she does not get enough love in this movie. Um, so hold your pickles. Let's see here. I want to find out who is playing Kerry Washington. Thank you. I'm saying thank you to Wikipedia. This is odd. But she doesn't get enough screen time in this, which isn't necessarily a negative thing. She gets a little bit more time in Rise of the Silver Surfer, and we'll get to that. But this is an okay movie. It really is just an okay movie. I had a good time with it. I think some of the writing is a little bit on the nose, but I think there's a lot of really good jokes in here too. Um, it's definitely more family oriented, which is odd because this one's PG-13 and the next one is rated PG. So I just from a ratings perspective, it's a little interesting, and I don't even think that it does much to earn that PG-13 rating. I think Doctor Doom shoots a laser through someone, and that's about as dark as it gets. Uh, but honestly, it really is good. It's fine. I'm trying to remember something that I can pull out and throw as any sort of commentary, and honestly, that might be the commentary in and of itself. It's pretty forgettable. A lot of it is anyway, but it is a lot of fun, and it is a movie I consider going back and watching. So it's automatically above F. It's automatically above D. Like, I do think this movie has merit. I think this nails. It doesn't completely nail what the Fantastic Four are, I think, but it certainly does a hell of a lot better job than other movies on this list. Uh, and I don't know. I don't think Doom was super interesting in this. I think he has some good ideas, and them actually being what was it, finding a way to turn Ben human again is interesting, and then him coming back at the end. Like, I'm remembering more of the end, and yeah, honestly, this movie is just a good time. It's fun. It's not really too bad. You can put it on and have a good time with it. Whereas Daredevil, there are moments where you're just gonna be like, you know. So yeah, I'm gonna leave that there for now, and I might move it later. Okay. So yeah, not long after Fantastic Four came out, The Last Stand made its appearance. And boy howdy, this movie sucks. Okay, so where do we even start? Well, first of all, I think it runs into the problem that a couple other movies on this list with the number three in the title have a problem with, and that is they're trying to juggle too much. Right off the bat, we have the Phoenix storyline that we're picking up on from the last movie, and they're also throwing in the Cure storyline as well. And we start with Angel trying to cut his own wings off, which is honestly brutal. And then they come up with the cure for that, and then he doesn't want the cure for some reason. I don't know. The leap there feels like a bit much. But this movie, Shadowcat plays a much more prominent role, which I would love, and I think the actress now I'm blanking on his name. I almost had it. I almost had it. Elliot Page, who who is now Elliot Page, I should say. Um, he played it as well as he could back in the day. And that's no disrespect to him. I think he's a great actor, but um, he it just feels weird trying to throw in the middle of Rogue and Iceman's relationship when I don't know. There's so many ways around what Rogue and Iceman have to deal with. Iceman just is kind of a dick this entire movie. Well, anyway, so that really kind of gets stuck in my craw. I think Magneto, the way he's portrayed in this movie, is not good at all. I think it's totally a betrayal of what he's been in the movies. Certainly, what he is in the comics. He's only slightly different in these movies, at least, where I don't know, he leaves Mystique for dead pretty much after she loses her abilities. He, he says a few lines and I'm blanking on him because I just got mad, but I just didn't appreciate Magneto in this movie at all, quite honestly, and him doing his whole shtick of I'm evil, let's wipe out, like I'm over it. You got that X Men one, I'm over it. Um, we also have his evil forces, and this is kind of what pissed me off the most about this movie. Is they try throwing in characters that they think might get movie people or comic fans excited, and here's where they went wrong. First of all, they had Callisto in here, who, if you don't know, is the leader of the Morlocks, the group of mutants that live underwater. And her underwater, in the sewers rather, and her ability is just to have heightened physical senses and capabilities. She's not able to do everything that she does in this movie, and even throwing Caliban's ability in here as well, where she can sense stuff. So we'll touch on Caliban later. He's That won't be the last time we talk about Caliban, and that's just one of them. And what the? Am I? What was that? That was weird. I hope that didn't mess up the recording. So yeah, Callisto's all messed up. They also have a guy who shoots spikes out of his face, and you would think, well, that could be Spike from X Men Evolution. That could be, Mara. There could be a number of people that this person could be. And in the cast, he's labeled as Kid Omega. Now, if you know anything about Kid Omega, you know that that's not Kid Omega. The guy with the pink hair who has, strong psychic abilities, almost up to Gene's level. Not quite, but he's pretty strong. That is not him. Uh, Now, I will say, having B show up being played by Fraser himself is is an interesting touch. I think he does a good job with the role. I think every time he comes back in the X Men universe, we'll touch on it later. It's just a benefit for everyone. It's just a good. He does a good job of it. And his fur doesn't look too bad. Honestly, it's practical here. Doesn't it honestly looks fine, truly. So we'll probably put, but like, here, hear me out. Okay, recording's not messed up. We're going 25 minutes, so I am going to pick the pace up just a little bit. Um, so yeah, overall, having and oh my god, Gina's Dark Phoenix. I haven't really even touched on her. She's awful. She's just truly awful. Femke Jensen does what she can. I think she's a fine actor. I don't really see much wrong with her. I just think there's not much directing to help her here. She's trying to play this chaotic evil, galactic entity that's also they get like a couple of things right about Dark Phoenix, and that she's more sexually awakened, and that she tries to have sex with Logan at some point. It's I don't know. It overall though it just feels weird, and her going back to her childhood home and then killing Xavier, and Xavier just being cool with it. It just and killing Cyclops. There's so much wrong with this movie. Like James Marsden again gets the short end of the stick. So I can't stand this movie, but there's enough in here that I think I could sit through and watch this again more than Elektra. I don't think it's as bad as Elektra. I truly don't. Like, there's stuff from a movie making perspective that makes Elektra bad, and as far as I can, I'd have to go back and look at it again with a finer tooth comb, but X3 at least is watchable. It's not great. It's honestly not good at all. It's pretty bad, but it's not Elektra bad. So we're going to leave it right there. So moving on to Fantastic Four: Rise of the Silver Surfer. Now this movie, it doesn't hold up to the first one, I don't think. I think there's a lot more goofs in here that make it more enjoyable to watch. I don't think it makes it more enjoyable than the first one. Um, but there's a lot of really good jokes in here, and a lot of the crux of this movie is Sue and Reed are getting married, but things keep getting in their way, whether it's Reed or whether it's external forces. Um, there's a lot going on here in this movie, I think. Um, and yeah, the plot of this movie doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me. I mean, it makes sense. It's just weird. It's just kind of basic, bare bones. Not really a whole lot going on here. Who is guy? Okay, so you have the Fantastic Four. They're trying to do their own thing, trying to figure out, different stuff, and they have Reed working on stuff. And then the Silver Surfer shows up and is like, "Hey, yo, my buddy Galactus is on his way." Who is a giant cloud. We don't really see Galactus as we know him, and I think they went that route. I can only guess they went that route because what do you do with a giant purple guy with a big head, like coming up to your planet and eating it? Like that doesn't seem very. I don't know if the average audience would go with that. So that's the route they went, and I understand it. I just don't like it. And also having the Silver Surfer played by Lawrence Fishburne is a choice. I'm not gonna say it's a bad choice because I do think it's a fine choice overall. But the performance is it's not there. It's just not there. Um, and honestly, the rest of the performances are serviceable. Nothing truly bad or good about any of them. There's some really good jokes in here. There's some good one-liners, especially between Johnny and Ben, and also Reed has some good stuff too. But on the whole, it's I don't know. It just feels fine. It's not even like I'm debating if I put it in C or D tier. Um, it's between one of these two for sure. If it's in C tier, it's below the first one. If it's in D tier, it's ahead of Daredevil. Um, that's where I'm at with that. Um, the way they're able to, I do like when they're able to bring Doom back the way that they do here. I think Doom being a consistent antagonistic force in the world of Fantastic Four is a good call. Um, and the fact that he comes back in the way that he does, it's good. We also have the way that Johnny kind of switches powers or anytime he touches someone. I think that's a good effect here. I just think it's a weird gimmick that they came up with to make this movie feel a little bit different, and I don't know if it works for me. So yeah, I'll put it in C tier for now, but it's kind of on the border. I could see it going even further down. Oh God. Um, Shit. X Men Origins Wolverine is next. This is a movie I had never watched before getting ready to do this video, and you know why I never watched it? Because everyone said it's awful. It's dog shit. It's the worst X Men movie you've ever seen. And you know what? They might have been right. This movie's awful. This has all the trappings of a early or late 2000s movie where we're trying to be more hardcore than we really are. We have Task Force X in this movie, and we have Will I Am playing, I think, Maverick. They never really say his name out. I mean, they say his human name, but not his mutant name. They also have Cotton from Scream. I'm blanking on his name. Liev Schreiber as Sabretooth, which I like that casting. I think he does a decent enough job here. Um, then you also have Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool, who's not yet Deadpool, the one that we know at least. This movie just tries to be too much. I think the way it presents itself, it takes itself way too seriously, and it's not fun at all. Really was kind of a drag, and the way they. The more I think about the different plot points in this movie, I have to shrug and be like, like Silver Fox, the way she's done in this movie, it's like, oh, okay, she faked her own death so that they could lure her, but then she's like, actually, Logan, let me help you escape. Like what? And the fact that you get shot with an adamantium bullet and you lose your memory, that's how we're gonna go about this. Nah, I know how cool Logan's origins are in the comics, and I think that only compounds things. My issues with this movie, because the way it's done in the comics, it's been done a few times, but I think the original way it's been done was quite good, and it made sense why his memories might be jumbled. Here, it's just, well, he got shot with an adamantium bullet. That's our easy way of writing this one off, dusting it off. Let's go on with our day, and it just doesn't work. It just does not work. So here's what I'm gonna say. This might be controversial. No, no, I don't think it will be. We're gonna put this right under The Last Stand. I think it's truly that bad. Uh, when you have a movie, when you have a tie-in video game that's better than your movie, like that's when you know you have an issue. So we're just gonna put it there and take an adamantium bullet to the brain and just forget that that movie ever existed. Except actually we can't because there's a really good payoff for it. Anyway, next one is X-Men First Class. All right, finally, some good fucking food. Okay, so this takes place in a different timeline essentially. I mean, they try to mask it as the same timeline, but there's leaps in logic you got to make for it to make sense, and it doesn't really work. But this is yeah. I mean, if you've seen it, you know. This is a story of how Xavier and Magneto became best friends and then betrayed each other at the end of all things. And right off the bat, I think this is a good movie. This is a really, honestly, a really good movie. I think it falls into some of the same trappings that X2 does, in that it's a little long in the tooth. It might be trying to do too much. And then at the same time doesn't do certain characters I like a lot justice. Case in point, Emma Frost. Um, but I really like how they brought in the Hellfire Society into this movie. I don't know if they did them as well as they could have, but having Kevin Bacon as Sebastian Shaw is, again, not casting I would have made, but honestly pretty good casting. He does a really good job of being that asshole villain that you just want to see get his comeuppance, and eventually he does in a very brutal fashion that honestly it's really well shot, really well done. It's a good payoff for Xavier, Magneto, Shaw, all that good stuff. So it is good. I think the star of the show is the relationship between Xavier and Magneto, and also Xavier and Mystique, um, and everything that comes in between those three. I think they're the true heart and soul of this movie. I think the team that they bring together is neat conceptually. I think bringing in a different Angel after we just had X3 just a few years before this, interesting. Played by Zoe Kravitz, who I didn't honestly know or remember was in this movie. But you also have Azazel on Magneto's side, as well as Havoc, which only makes things more confusing as to like where Cyclops falls into all of these things. Oh my god, I forgot Cyclops was in X-Men Origins Wolverine. I just don't want to think about that movie anymore. See, it's already conflicting with that. So yeah, honestly, First Class is great. It's a good time. It's fun. It's got some of that Kingsman like feel to it, and I think that's by design. I think that's I think I want to say it's the same director. Don't quote me on that. Um, but it feels good. There's some stuff that doesn't make sense, like why Beast having his big old beast feet out makes him run super fast. I don't know if that makes sense. And then Banshee, he's neat. There's some good funny bits with him. But honestly, a lot of this cast is fairly forgettable, and I think the movies realize this because we kind of dropped them moving forward. So that being said, I am probably gonna put this in A tier. I'm thinking I'll do A tier. You get an A plus, and I'll put it above X2 because while I do think I like the story of X2 more, I think First Class does its story better, if that makes sense. Like on paper, the story for X2 is better than this, but the way First Class is presented and the way it's displayed, I think it's much more entertaining than X2 is. So yeah, with that, we go on to the Wolverine. This was another new one that I hadn't seen before taking on this part one of this monstrous task. Um, and I really didn't know what to expect from it. So imagine my surprise when I turn it on and we see Femke Jensen pretty quickly in this movie. I'm like, oh, this is the same timeline as the original movies, and I don't know why that was such a surprise to me, but it was. Um, but it's an interesting movie. I think Wolverine and Japan stuff can be good. It's not my favorite kind of Wolverine story. That being said, I did like this one. I did like this movie quite a bit. Is it as good as some of Wolverine's other outings? No, it's good, not great. I think is where I fall on there's a lot of really interesting stuff. I think the politics of the Yoshida family is interesting. His relationship with Mariko, it feels a little bit forced. Like, and I know they're together in the comics, and they've wanted them to get together in the movies as well. But I don't know if it necessarily worked here. It kind of feels like, oh, we're kind of at each other's throats, and then all of a sudden we're, you know, hot and heavy for each other. And Yukio, she's not used nearly enough in this movie. She's kind of there, and then she's not, and then she is at the end. It's like, what are we doing here? Not to mention, completely different character than she is in Deadpool 2. And having Viper, of all people, show up here, I think was a weird choice. I would have gone with, I don't know, some other villain of Logan's. Viper is not what comes to mind when I think of enemies of Wolverine. It just isn't. Um, and the way they do Silver Samurai just feels weird too. Just having it being a giant mech suit, trying to steal. The third act is where this movie kind of falls apart for me. Quite honestly, I think there's a lot of cool stuff here up until the third act where they try to steal. I don't know what. Quite honestly, was it his bone marrow where they were trying to get the regenerative abilities from, and why did that stop as soon as they cut off that supply? Wouldn't he still have some of the regenerative blood in him so they could at least regenerate for a little while? And I don't know. I have a lot of questions about this third act. Like I said, I think that's where this movie really falls apart. So I'm not too hot on this movie, but I'm also I do like it quite a bit. I think I do enjoy it more than the first X. I enjoy it more than these two for sure. I don't think I would watch this over X2 ever, but I do think between this and X Men, there's a nostalgia factor with the first X Men movie. I watched that a lot as a kid. And Wolverine's, I don't know. If we're going off of straight movie quality, I'd probably put it here. But if we're going off of which one am I more likely to rewatch, I'd probably put it like this. So I don't know. I'm just gonna leave it here so I can feel good about myself. We cool with that? All right, we're cool with that. Okay. And I will say too, the post-credits scene to this movie got me hyped as all hell because guess what's coming next? That's right, it's Days of Future Past. This movie kicks ass. It runs into some of these same issues that X2 does, where it's a little long-winded, but it's quite good. Now, for this movie, I do feel it is important for me that I throw out that I did watch the road cut for this, which adds like maybe 10 15 minutes of extra footage. And I'm not going to say it completely changes everything, but it kind of changes a lot towards the end of the second act, going into the third act. Um, and I'll touch on that in just a second. Overall surface level thoughts on this movie really good, really 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 good. Um, the way it's able to take a storyline that's so beloved from the comics and you know it's there, it's in the movie, but then add a whole other added layer to it, make it you know take more than it does in the comics, and then also fitting in some of the characters from First Class in it, developing Xavier and Magneto's relationship as well as Xavier and Mystique's relationship. It's super interesting. I had such an interest. It's a good time. It's a good movie. There's a lot that makes you think about it, but then it's also a send off to the original X-Men trilogy, that universe, that timeline. And you see at the beginning, you see, Halle Berry's back as Storm. You see, um, Elliot Page as Kitty is back. You have obviously Ian McKellen and Patrick Stewart are back as well. There's a lot of returning faces here. We also have new faces, faces I completely forgot in this movie, like Bishop, like Warpath, like what's her name? Ooh, Blink, for example. But you also have Colossus, who's I'm pretty sure is the same actor from X2. Obviously, you have Bobby Drake, played by Shawn Ashmore. He's back too. So a lot of returning cast members, a lot of new faces as well. But it's just the way they're able to interweave the future storyline with the past storyline and have it all kind of come together towards the end is super interesting. I think the character arcs that James McAvoy's Xavier goes through, leading up to his conversation with Patrick Stewart's Xavier, super good, super compelling, super interesting stuff. The way Beast plays his character, love that. I think there's some stuff between him and Mystique that's added in the road cut. I'm not crazy about the relationship. I don't think it really has a whole lot of dividends to give between here and then the rest of the Fox X-Men movies. So I'm not going to harp on it too much. It's honestly, it's there, whatever. Um, but I do really like the added footage here where we bring in Rogue, Anna Paquin in to the fold. We have her take Kitty's place to help Wolverine stay in the past, which there's some logical leaps you gotta do there. Like, how are they able to transition? Who's keeping Wolverine's consciousness in the past like that? It is what it is. But this movie does what First Class does, where it really wears the time period that it's set in on its sleeve. We're really in, let's see, the 70s, right? So you really feel that. Man, this movie's just really good. Oh, we also get Sean Evan Peters, right, as Quicksilver, and he does a really good job. Um, so yeah, and I think the ending is such a great send off to the original universe when you have Hugh Jackman walking through Xavier School now that the timeline's fixed, and you see all the old cast from James Marsden to Famke Jensen to even I had his actor's name in my head a moment ago, but the guy who plays Fraser as Beast. And I think this time he didn't have practical for I think it was special effects. It still looked great. Um, so honestly, lots to love about this movie. This one I'm debatably going to put in S. I think you know what, I am going to leave it there because I came out this movie just really hot for X-Men. I was just like, this is awesome. This is hype as heck. This is really cool. The only problem I have with it is that it's a little long, and it doesn't kill anything for me. I think it uses its pacing quite well, even if there's a lot of it. So, yeah, at the end of the day, I'm just going to leave it there. Um, and I'll probably, there's a good chance I move it when we start ranking some of these other movies in it. But for the time being, this is where we're going to leave it. All right, so Fan for Stick. This movie sucks. This movie is not written well. It's shot so dully. There's like hardly any color to this movie. When you compare it to these two Fantastic Four movies, it's like, what were we thinking? Uh, and they try to. This feels a lot more akin to the Ultimate Fantastic Four Origins, and it just doesn't work for me. It was so boring. It's so bland. There's it almost, I think it's better than Elektra, but it's still just as bland and boring of a bad movie. There's some weird special effects, like when they go through the transdimensional portal, whatever they have. I'm not even sure what it was. The effects there were not good, not good. And there's some stuff that goes on there anyway. Just like, what do we? I, see, I'm back at this point. It's like I don't. It's a smooth ride. It's not too long, so I do got to give it credit for that. It's over before you really get too angry. Um, but I don't know. They try their best to nail the dynamics here. I think Reed and Sue's dynamic is fine. Reed's dynamic with Ben, I don't think gets enough attention, and Johnny's just there. He really doesn't do much. And then having everyone come together at the end, you really have like one fight scene with the Fantastic Four, and then you just watch them develop their abilities. The rest of the movie, it is a very drawn out origin. Like the first, no, actually, I take that back. I think the first real fight scene isn't until the end when they're fighting Doom in the other dimension. It's really bizarre. It's so bizarre, and it's not at all fun like the Fantastic Four should be. So, I can't, in good conscience, put it at C. Now, do I put it at D or do I put it at F and move one of those up? Because F's starting to get a little crowded. Now, all right, let's play the comparison game here. Would I rather watch this or Elektra? The answer is Fantastic Four. Would I rather watch this or X-Men Origins Wolverine? And now, see, it's getting tougher. Um, but I still think I'd rather watch Fantastic Four. Now, The Last Stand. What do we think about that? Hmm. I really don't like the Fantastic Four, but I also really don't like The Last Stand. Hmm. Shit. I put this in D tier? No, because I didn't derive any enjoyment out of this movie. No, we're putting it in F. We're gonna put The Last Stand in D because it did have the fastball special. There, we're doing it. All right, we're committing to it. Uh, fuck me. All right, these movies are just god awful, making me pick like that. All right. Well, at least we're back at the cream of the crop, right? Here's Deadpool, the first one rather. Now I saw this in theaters. I think this is the first one of these that I saw in theaters. Gonna quick do my math on that. Oh my gosh, yeah, it actually is. All right, so here's Deadpool. And as much as I might roll my eyes at anyone who's wearing like a Deadpool riding a unicorn like hat or shirt or whatever, I do really like Deadpool, and I think what Ryan Reynolds does with this movie on such a low budget is really impressive. This is a movie that's just start to finish filled to the brim with jokes, and will they all work? No, absolutely not. But do they all serve their purpose, and do they move on quickly from it? Yes. This movie really has little to no fat on it. I think there's a lot of there's not a whole lot of character growth that you need for because you only have like three, four main characters in this. I think having someone like Ajax as the main villain, it's like interesting. Most average moviegoers won't know who that is. I certainly didn't at the time. Uh, but keeping it small and contained, I think, works wonders for this movie and allows for the jokes to hit harder. And having a lot of really good beats come back to pay off in the end, like his joke about Wham and then playing Guilty Whisper at the end. There's a lot of really good stuff in this movie. The jokes, while they may not always hit, you do at least got a chuckle or grin a little bit. So I'm thinking for what it. Okay, here's where my conflict is because it's definitely not F. It's definitely not D. It's definitely not C. It's definitely not B. Uh, but is it A or S? Because here's the thing. Here's where I'm at with this. Deadpool does exactly what it sets out to do, and it does it pretty damn well. And I'm laughing like pretty consistently throughout this movie, which is exactly what this movie wants to do. I think the anti-hero BS, whatever, not my favorite thing in the world. But Deadpool, I'll put it at the top of A tier. I do really like this movie a lot. I like it a lot. I just know there's at least one other movie I'm going to put an S tier, and I don't want an S to get too crowded, so we're going to leave it at that. Um, Fuck, there's so many good jokes though. Oh, come on, this is tough. No, we'll leave it at A tier. We'll leave it at A tier. Speaking of A, Apocalypse. Talk about now this movie. A lot of people, I think, when it came out, it got a bad rep, and honestly, it's not that bad. It's not good, but it's not bad either. I think the biggest issue with this movie is you could point to any of the multiple characters that are on this poster, and I couldn't tell you which one had any real character growth. That's big problem number one. Problem number two is the big guy in the background, Apocalypse himself. He doesn't really do much, and his end game at the end is so obtuse. I don't know what happened. I truly don't. It looked like he was trying to take stuff away so he could build his own pyramid, and it's like, for what purpose, to what end? I'm not sure. I think his selection of horsemen are interesting. Like, you have Angel turned into Archangel, cool. You have Psylocke, cool. Does she do anything other than swing her sword around? No, so that's a little less cool. Then you also have you have Magneto, who friend turned enemy turned friend at the end, which I'm kind of sick of that, and we're not done with it yet, unfortunately. And then who is the other horseman? I don't remember. Well, see, there's your problem. But we do get, because I legitimately watched this like a week ago. Like, there's no reason I shouldn't remember the other horseman. Uh, but this is where we kind of get together the main squad that's going to be with us throughout the rest of Fox's X-Men universe. You have the guy from Ready Player One as Cyclops. You have Sophie Turner as Jean Grey. You have Nightcrawler. Havoc's here too, but then he kind of disappears for some reason. When he blows up that thing, he just kind of explodes. I don't know why, because he wasn't that close to the explosion. I think Quicksilver should have been able to get him out. I think the fact that he wasn't there at all is just kind of weird and bizarre. And maybe that's something they're going to touch back on later. I don't know. It still feels very weird. And yeah, again, don't get me started on. Oh, it was Storm. It was Storm. There we go. I got there. Cool. Again, she didn't really do much. She kind of just did a couple of things, and then stood in the background, and then saw Mystique do some stuff. It was like, I'm a good guy now. So no, I can't give this movie any points for how it portrays any of its characters, other than probably Quicksilver. We just get more of his stuff from Days of Future Past, and it works. I don't think as well as Days of Future Past, but I do think that's strictly because there's a lot more going on. When the mansion's blown up, he's saving all the kids and stuff. Um, yeah, and everything with Beast, I don't know. Feels like we didn't get much with him either. I think one of the more interesting moments in this movie would be when they're all captured by Stryker, and they free Logan, and he has the Weapon X stuff on his head, which is interesting, I guess. It turns weird when Jean kind of helps him remember his name. It's like, is that where he fell in love with her? Because that's really twisted. She is like a child still. So a lot of weird overtones or undertones there. And everything with Mystique, stuff with Magneto and his family too. It's like, I don't, I don't know about a lot of this, quite honestly. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't fit right with what these movies have been before this, which is a shame because Days of Future Past was so strong. Deadpool was so good. But this movie, it just, and to speak positively of it, I think this movie does better with Cyclops than any of the other movies have. I think he's only slightly more interesting, if only because this is him discovering his powers. This is him going to Xavier's school, whatever. I also don't love Sophie Turner's Jean Grey. I'm gonna say it. Everything I saw for the trailers for Dark Phoenix didn't sell me. Everything I saw in Apocalypse didn't sell me, and we'll get to Dark Phoenix in a second. So yeah, not a lot really redeeming this movie in my eyes. But that being said, it's not all too bad either. I think this is one of those ones where it's certainly not any of these top three tiers, and I don't think it's an F tier movie. I'm not convinced it's a D tier movie either, is the thing. I think the action set pieces in this movie are interesting. The fact that they're able to pull in so many different characters from different comic book lines and stuff that comic fans could latch onto, like Caliban's in here, cool. But I don't know. I think Apocalypse is just dreadfully boring. And the more I'm thinking about this, the more I'm probably going to rank this fairly low. Um, no, I am probably going to put it at the bottom of C tier. That's probably what I'm going to do. Because would I watch it again? Probably not. Actually, you know what? I think I will put it in. There's just a lot of weird choices, but the way it ends is actually pretty neat. Where you have like the main squad all lined up, and it's like Quicksilver, Storm, Cyclops, Jean, Nightcrawler. I don't love how Xavier goes well in this movie either. There's just a lot that's just. But honestly, it's fine. I'm probably gonna leave it at C. I'm really harping on it. There's a lot of stuff in here that leaves me scratching my head, like the stuff with Rose Byrne's character, Moira McTaggart. Why did we have her forget everything only to make her remember here? I'm not sure I fully understand that. It's kind of fucked up. So I don't know. Not a huge fan of this movie, but I will keep it in here. I think Olivia Munn is Psylocke, which is a questionable cast. You're kind of whitewashing Psylocke a little bit. Um, whether it's Qui-Gon or Betsy Braddock. Betsy's also white. I'm realizing as I say that out loud, but no British accent from her, and she's not Asian. So which Psylocke is she at? Good question. Weird casting. Doesn't get nearly enough to do, and she's one of my favorite X-Men, so that really kind of bugged me. So yeah, we're not going to talk about that movie anymore because it is kind of boring, and that's probably the worst thing I can say about it. Also, the tease at the end of it. We'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. You're teasing Mr. Sinister at the end of this movie, and I kind of get some payoffs to that with Logan, but you can tell they switch courses a little bit. So yeah. Anyway, with that, let's talk about Logan. I've only seen this movie once before I got into all this, so I had to go back and rewatch this for sure. And I was kind of blown away by how much I got drawn into this movie. Right from the bat, the first thing you have with Logan is he's trying to stop a bunch of people from robbing his car, and he gets the shit beat out of him, but then he brutally kills them all. Um, so, right from the jump, you have a Logan that's vulnerable, that's not nearly as strong as he used to be, and is slowly dying. Um, and I think that's super compelling. And this is clearly a Western movie, or inspired by Western movies. I'd even say it is a Western, honestly, as he's escorting Laura, who, I didn't know this was Daphne Keene's first movie, and she absolutely knocks it out of the park. I don't know how old she was when she filmed this, but she crushed it. Um, and James McAvoy is not in this movie. Patrick Stewart as Xavier returning one more time for this universe, it knocks it out of the park as someone who was once a proud mutant, who was once a very smart and knowledgeable man, reduced to what he is thanks to his dementia. Heartbreaking just as someone who's dealt with that in real life, and then heartbreaking to see Patrick Stewart play it so well. And you also have Caliban there, who played by Stephen Merchant, very different actor than the one he was playing, who was played by him. Very different than the actor that played him in Apocalypse, which doesn't bother me at all, really. But he gets a lot of really cool moments. He's a good character in this as well. There's like really no wasted characters in this, and Donald Pierce is in this. Like the Reavers, like hello, it didn't register with me when I watched this for the first time that they were the Reavers or they were supposed to be the Reavers. I didn't really know what the Reavers were, and we get them here, and it's like, oh, okay, interesting. It's not the Reavers I'm familiar with from the comics, with what Claremont wrote towards the end of his run. But it's them. It's very clearly the Reavers, and you also throw in X-24. Man, I'm getting distracted. What I really love about this movie is the relationships that Logan has with Patrick Stewart's character, and then Laura as well. You see Logan bend over backwards to be able to take care of Xavier, and then it kind of all just ends super quickly, and it's like, oh, you really didn't see that coming. It really breaks your heart. So the fact that he's able to kind of heal from that, move on from that, while also in a dark sort of twisted way, be relieved of his duty of taking care of him sort of way. He forms a bond with Laura, and I think that's truly the emotional core of this movie, is him forming this bond with someone who is by all intents and purposes his daughter. And this is where we get her over to Eden, and we see some of the other mutants there. One of them is Richter, which shout out to Richter. Um, but yeah, it's a good movie. Use it, and I think it works so well because it's got a heart, it's got a core, an emotional core to it. You have these characters that are strong in their prime, but we're not in their prime anymore, and you really see that. And I think they really hammer that point home. And the ending, gosh, it made me. I'm gonna start crying thinking about it now. Like, I got goosebumps. I was crying as soon as he's passed on, and they bury him. She puts the cross into an X. It's like, man, this movie is it perfect? No, but is it the movie that's on this list that's closest to being perfect? I do think so. I do think so. Man, I'm gonna put that top of vest here. That's not moving. For the rest of this video, that's not moving. Kid, gotcha. But yeah, so shouts to that. James Mangold knocked it out of the park. Boyd Holbrook is Donald Pierce. Great acting as well. He's really great. Just about everything he's in that I've seen at least. Okay, we're in the home stretch now. All right, Deadpool 2. It's like the first one but bigger, and that's honestly nailing it. This is a good movie. I don't think it's as good as the first one, but I don't think it's a bad movie either. It's definitely a good movie. A lot of laughs, a lot of good stuff. But I think this one really kind of falls where the first one you kind of show to anyone, be like, hey, this is what Deadpool is. This is what a superhero movie can be. You can really tell that that Deadpool 2 has a bigger budget and are dipping more and more into the X Men universe. And while it makes someone like me happy, seeing Black Tom Cassidy being put on a live action screen and then being lambasted because his name is Black Tom Cassidy. What are we thinking? Is funny. Having Juggernaut be one of the main antagonists of this movie is cool. He's been done an injustice multiple times in this in this franchise, quite honestly. And you also have everything with Cable. His daughter's name is Hope. Guess who knows who Hope Summers is? It's me. Guess let's see, what else was there? Oh, I mean, I didn't know who Shatterstar was the first time I watched this movie, but I did this time. One of the founding members of X Force in the comics. Same with Cable and Domino, and he just kind of gets, you know, chopped up by a helicopter. It's really funny. There's a lot of really just fun nods, like, hey, let's have fun with this. This is the X Men universe. What can we do that won't affect the rest of the movies moving forward, while also making up for a really good joke for both average viewers and comic fans. Like Vanisher being played by Brad Pitt is such a weird thing to do, and they did it anyway. And he's in the movie for like all of like 2 seconds. It's very funny. But also having stuff like the Mojo World being referenced and not really addressing it, but it's there for X Men fans to kind of latch on to. Um, and also throwing the name Essex out there again, calling back to the post-credit scene of Apocalypse, which we're still not really gonna get any resolution to. I digress. This movie is fun. It's funny. It's got heart. It's about family. Vin Diesel, um, and it has some really good music choices. I think the way it uses "Take on Me" is quite inspirational. And there's a lot of really cool action scenes. Seeing Domino do anything, Domino in the comics is great, but when she's played by Zazie Beetz, it's like taken up to another level. And I'm kind of sad we don't get to see more of her in that. I hope they keep her like they keep Zazie Beetz as Domino moving forward, but we'll see. Josh Brolin as Cable, he crushes it. He does a great job with it, and having Negasonic, Teenage Warhead, Yukio, and Colossus back in the mix is great. Having the rest of the new timeline X Men in a classroom, quickly closing the door for a quick cameo is a lot of fun. It's a lot of really. This movie is just fun, but I think it misses some of what the first one had going for it by being a little bit too much. Um, Still a good movie, still a great time. I could easily put this on and have a good time with it, but I'm not sure I'm going to put it in A tier. I think I am going to put it in B tier, but it's top of B tier, pretty clearly, cut and dry. So I'd rather watch that over the Wolverine, rather watch that than X-Men. It's better than both those movies. I digress. Let's move on. The Dark Phoenix. If that side didn't tell you everything you need to know about this movie, I don't know what will, because this movie's awful. This movie's truly garbage. And this movie kind of came out right around the time that I don't know if this came out before movie theaters shut down thanks to COVID or if it happened like right after. But either way, this was happening right as the Disney acquisition of Fox was starting to go down, and so we kind of figured this would be the last Fox X-Men movie, and you can kind of feel that towards the end of it. It feels like a resolution to a lot of different things. Is that earned? No, not in the slightest. I think Jean's entire character arc in this is unearned. Her being like, actually, no, I don't want to be with you guys. This thing inside me is too strong. You just don't understand. To, actually, these are my friends. Xavier's trying to help me the entire time, which, yes, but also no. And Xavier just being a scumbag for like most of this movie, being like, well, actually, I erased her memories of her family to help her. And it's like, no, that's fucked up on multiple levels. It's one of the most fucked up things he's done in this movie, and it almost cost everything. Um, and having Magneto treated the way he is, he doesn't show up to like 68% of the way in, and it's that same enemy to friend to lover pipeline that we're going through. And it's like, I'm sick of this. I'm sick of Michael Fassbender's Magneto being like, actually, Charles, we're going to be enemies. Oh, actually, Charles, let's be friends and save the world together. It's like, come on, make up your mind, dude. And don't even get me started on Jessica Chastain's character, because she does nothing for me in this movie. I like Jessica Chastain. I think she can be a really good actress when she puts her mind to it. They just did not give her anything to do in this. She, in interviews, she was saying, yeah, I didn't know what my character's name was until I saw it in a theater. And it's Vuk. And it's like, what? And if you don't know who the enemies in this movie are, I don't blame you. I didn't. I had to look it up on Wikipedia, because guess what? You know what they are? They're the broccoli people on the planet that Phoenix destroys on its way to the Shi'ar Crystal in the original Phoenix storyline in the comics. They get little to no story time in there, and they get, honestly, they probably had more on-screen time here than they do in the comics. In all of comics. Like, they just do not get enough love there, which is fine, because their only purpose is to be like, hey, we're peace-loving people, but also Phoenix took us out because she destroyed our son. Like, that's all they're there for, and here they're a major antagonistic force, and it doesn't work. They're very emotionless, and it's not played well at all. So stakes never felt lower. Resolution to it couldn't have felt cheaper. This movie's awful. This is an F tier movie. This is an F tier movie. I'll say it. There's a lot of weird, questionable choices we make throughout this movie, from both a creative standpoint and from a character standpoint. Like, why did we make Nightcrawler snap and kill a bunch of people? I don't know. Why was Jennifer Lawrence killed off halfway through the movie? Probably because she didn't want to be a part of it. You know? And her makeup looked real cheap in this movie. A lot of things looked really cheap in this movie. So, with all that being said, I am probably going to put it in F tier. I know I don't want to have this bottom row too crowded. So honestly, I might even put it in D tier. No, actually, you know what? I am going to put it in F tier. Do I like... No. 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 Because you know what really was a nail in the coffin for me? Like, I was... after I watched the movie, I thought about it and was like, no, this movie sucks. But before that, what really made me start thinking, well, no, this movie's quite awful, is at the end of it, when the person who killed one of their teachers and essentially did all this stuff that just kind of really messed things up for a lot of people. And they named the school after her. They changed the school to the Jean Grey School. Why? Because it feels like the right thing to do. Does it? It doesn't. Doesn't. Really questionable. A lot of questionable things in this movie. So we're just kind of moving on from that, because I don't want to think about that movie ever again. Alright. Last, but certainly not least, we have the New Mutants. Now, this was a movie I was following for a long time. Like, the news of. Not necessarily, like, paying attention to every bit in detail, but this is one I've been kind of had my ear to the ground on, because it had Anya Taylor-Joy as Magic, and that is great casting. You had Maisie Williams as Rain Sinclair, great casting. And the rest, I mean, oh, the guy from Stranger Things as Cannonball, great casting. Uh, and honestly, I didn't know the actress who played Danny in this before this. I think this was her first movie, and she does a good enough job too. Great casting on there. I think the only thing, and people have complained about this, just in brief, I did some research on it too because I was curious. But Roberto da Costa, while his actor is Brazilian, he's not African. He's not like black Brazilian, and that is important to his origin story. So I do feel like I need to point that out. Didn't need to whitewash Sunspot, as it were. Um, with that being said, Sunspot really doesn't do much in this movie to really warrant him being in the movie, if you ask me. Um, so I don't know. This was one that had a lot of trouble with production, and then Fox got acquired by Disney. It's a whole thing. I think I was reading into it. Long term plans. They're gonna have this, and then two more New Mutants movies, and then kind of tied into the X-Men storyline, and do an Inferno movie, which would have been really cool actually. But obviously, we'll never see that, and that's totally fine. I'll let them do what they're gonna do. But man, it just kept getting pushed back after the acquisition, and then there reshoots that had to be done. Um, I don't know. The production on this movie was just so troubled. There's a moment where I didn't think it was ever going to come out, and then they just kind of dropped it. I think on in theaters with little warning, um, and as a result, bombed at the box office, and they put it on Disney Plus not long after that. So I didn't expect much going into this, and quite honestly, I was surprised, pleasantly, slightly pleasantly. I don't think this is a good movie. I don't think that this is an awful movie. I think there's a lot of really weird choices we're making this. I don't think every performance is great. Um, I love Anya Taylor Joy, but I do think she forgets to use her Russian accent here and there. And Maisie Williams' accent, I know she's British and I know she's trying to do Irish, but I don't know if it really worked for me. Um, and when you have such a small cast, if even one of them isn't delivering, you're gonna notice it. Um, like whoever played Danny's father in this movie didn't work for me. I don't think his performance was that great, and I don't know if that's his fault or the director's fault. I don't know. Um, so there's that. But even looking at the tone of this, it feels different than any other X Men movie we've had before. It goes for more of a horror route, which works really well with Danny's power set. As soon as people started having visions of some of the greatest fears, I'm like, this is Danny. This is all Danny's power. The fact that they're able to physically manifest, I am sure her powers could do that eventually, but like, I don't know. That feels weird for them to kind of be able to do that right off the bat. Though I get why you'd want to do it that way to add more tension. Um, and then having them all kind of slowly but surely reveal where they are, it kind of feels Breakfast Clubby, but with horror elements. And just from that perspective alone, I enjoyed that part of this movie a lot. Having Reyes, who is an actual comics character, she's not usually an antagonist like this. Have her be an antagonist and the warden essentially for their prison. It's interesting. Um, and I think they nailed most of the New Mutant characters. I think the big exception would be um, Ileana, which really destroys me because she's probably one of my favorite of the New Mutants. She's kind of a racist in this movie. She doesn't like Danny at all. She's calling her all these, awful names throughout the movie, and she's just kind of an asshole and kind of a bully, which isn't really what Magic's like. Yeah, she's kind of edgy. Yeah, she's kind of hardcore. She disrespects authority, but she doesn't take it out on her friends like that. And also giving her Lockheed. What was the deal with Lockheed in this movie? He's an actual dragon. He's not a puppet that turns into a dragon occasionally. And he's usually with Kitty Pryde. And there's a plane going over by. I don't know if that's coming through. Um, and I don't. Maybe this is the way of saying, hey, we're opening up a portal to Limbo anyway. We might as well give her Lockheed. I don't know if that's what was happening there. Um, but I think her action scenes were pretty cool. Her using her soul sword was dope. Um, and I think she's really the only one that has any really cool fighting scenes. I think in order to save on budget, they had Maisie Williams transform off screen. Um, so there's that. And Roberto doesn't really do much either. And what's the deal with Cannonball just being able to go like zoom? Like that's not what his power is. It's to shoot off like a cannonball. His catchphrase in the comics, especially early on in the New Mutants run in the 80s, was "I'm invulnerable when I'm blasting," with a southern accent because he's from Texas. He doesn't say that at all in this movie. 0 out of 10. No, I'm just kidding. But um, his powers don't work the way they do here. It feels odd doing it all. But I think they start kind of nailing the dynamics between him and Sunspot, but I don't think they truly nail it. They definitely changed Sunspot's origin in this, and Magic's too, because her oh man, Magic's origins in the comics are actually kind of fucked up. So I'm okay. They went a different route with it, but I don't know. And the Demon Bear being the final fight, it's like, well, can't they just have Danny dissipate it? Can't they just have her be like, okay, it's gone? Didn't make a whole lot of sense to me, quite honestly. But what I will say is, as much as I might rag on this movie, it was only an hour and a half long, which I really appreciate. Um, there's not much to redeem this movie. I say that after I was just kind of. I don't hate this movie. I don't love this movie either. It is supernatural Breakfast Club with mutants, and I'm not sure what the character arcs were. Like, I don't. The writing is okay. You could see something good being here, something really cool. They don't nail it. Um, so hmm, I don't know. Where does that put that on here though? All right. Well, let's see. Do I like it better? I think I like it better than just about everything in F. Do I like it better than the yes? What about Daredevil? I'm not sure. I'm genuinely not sure. I'm surprised by that. Cause I like Daredevil, but not that much. Hmm. You know, I think while I'm here, I'm gonna move this there. Just kind of break things up a little bit. This is the hardest one. I'm sure the more I think about this movie, the more I'll dislike it. But at this moment, I'm honestly kind of high on it. It's a good movie. No, it's an okay movie. I think it gets a bad rep, but honestly, there was a lot for me to enjoy there. Um, I will actually put it over Daredevil, but is it good enough to be C tier? Hmm. Do I be bold or do I go with what I think the norm would go with? This is tough. Um, man, you know what? I am probably gonna put it in C tier. I think the fact that it goes to be like a smaller budget indie horror film vibe with mutants, while also being kind of like a Breakfast Club situation, works for it a lot for me. Um, but that might just be me. I think that I'm sure I'm not the only one who likes this movie. Because I honestly don't think it's all that bad. It's not good either, to be clear. That's why it's at the bottom of C, but it's certainly not bad either. It's not that bad. So I think I am gonna put it there. And any final adjustments? Um, X2 feels a little high. I might bump X2 down. Maybe switch it with Deadpool 2. No, I think Deadpool 2 is pretty firmly in B. Do I put X2 there as well? You know what? I'll leave it there. We'll come back to this some other time, and adjust it accordingly. So, yeah, there you have it. There you go. Here are all the Fox Marvel movies ranked and tiered up. Uh, what are your thoughts on it? Leave it down in the comments below. Subscribe and like the video if you enjoyed what went down here, or if you didn't, tell me what you didn't like. And remember, be civil, because at the end of the day, this is my opinion, and your opinion probably not as good as mine, but it's yours as well, and I will not take away your right to have it. So as you can see here, we still have all of these movies here. I'm not ranking Big Hero 6. I know it's a Marvel comic technically, but I'm not ranking that. We have all these other Marvel movies to rank, I'll probably wait to do Spider-Man until we get closer to either Craven or Venom 3 later this year. So what I might do is I might do the rest of the weird one-off Marvel movies like Howard the Duck, the original Incredible Hulk movie, and the Blade movies. Oh, and Ghost Rider as well, and the Punisher movies. Okay, so there's still a good amount, obviously, of movies to work through, and then I'll probably start working my way through the MCU before we get to the Spider-Man movies, because good lord, that's gonna be awful too. All right, so yeah, this is only part one. I feel like what we had to do here. If you want to see where this goes in the future, stay tuned. I don't know when the next part will drop, but I'm sure it won't take too long. So yeah, cool. Thank you for watching. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate it. And have a good day. Yeah. Hey you. Yeah, you. Made it to the end of the video. I'm proud of you. You know what else you should do? You should hit that like and subscribe button. Hit that notification bell. Be sure to tune into our live streams. Check out some of these videos that I've put up here around me for you to check out and enjoy. That is all.